An automated car may be driving itself, but it's still there to drive a human in many cases. As long as there's a human in the interaction, we need to focus on that person because they're ultimately the one making the decision.
To People of Prospect. I'm Doug Davenport, an Executive Director of Prospect Silicon Valley, and we started People of Prospect over the last year to connect with people we don't get to see often enough, interesting people in our ecosystem, and folks that we believe have an interesting perspective, an interesting vocation, and are doing something that really is kind of meaningful in the grand picture of what it's all about here in bringing innovative technology and innovative solutions to the world for making the world a better place. So this morning, we are talking to Mr. Christian Roth, who is CEO of fka Silicon Valley. Now, FKA stands for something impossibly long in German, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I got to know fka Silicon Valley quite a long time ago when the organization first moved to Silicon Valley and created its space here from its headquarters in Germany. And I'd love for you, Christian, to maybe first kind of start about the origin of fkaSV and a little bit about maybe what inspired you to do this kind of work.
Yeah, thanks, Doug, for the quick intro. I'm very happy to be here and share a little bit of the story about the company and myself with everyone. Yeah, well, FKA, as you said, it stands for Forschungsgesellschaft Kraftfahrwesen mit beschränkter Haftung Aachen, which is a mouthful, and that's kind of the reason why we use the acronym. But all it really says is it basically means research company for automotive, based out of Aachen, Germany, which is where we're from. And we're a research company that was spun out of a research institute for automotive engineering in 1981. So really rooted in basic groundbreaking automotive research is where it came from. And the reason they spun out the company was because there was obviously a need to continue the high academic research that we were doing, but expand it into a more agile industry-like format where confidentiality is handled a little bit differently. You don't have to interact with a public entity like a university as much. And this is where FK has kind of come from, and it's grown into a company that spans 10 different departments, ranging from tire testing to drop tower experiments for crash boxes, for passive safety features, active safety features like ADAS systems. But also we do a lot of work around user experience testing, design, and concept generation with OEMs in the automotive industry. Specifically here in Silicon Valley, as you can see behind me, we're virtually very close to each other in the same building while, COVID is keeping us apart. But as you can see behind me, a big part of our work here locally is our driving simulator and our work in human factors and user experience testing. So basically what we try to do here is bring our automotive experience for testing and validation of functions specifically in the human domain, human machine interaction, and bring that to those companies that are doing some really innovative work here in Silicon Valley around software, around in-vehicle experiences, and kind of pair that up with our experience of how to test and how to validate a system and how to ensure that it's safe and it doesn't distract and that it matches what a consumer would actually expect of a vehicle in a vehicle system or context. And so that's really in a quick wrap up what fka does, and what we're striving for is kind of increased safety in every system that we work on with our customers.
You talk about human factors, and I know a lot about this because I've kind of seen what you guys do here and there. But I guess I'm curious. Simulation is a really important part of deciding, how a driver's kind of interior environment is going to be shaping out in the future here, right? And you're really looking at kind of the interaction between the driver and whatever was around him. So I guess I wonder, what forces are shaping the design of future cars, and what role do you see fka Silicon Valley playing in kind of those factors?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. In my opinion, we've seen actually a lot of different directions happening in the past here. I think over the last 5-6 years, we've seen a lot of a hype culture around automated driving, and all of a sudden, it seemed like technology was pushing innovation forward. AI advanced super quickly. Computer vision has gone almost to like a type of revolution. And there was few people who could actually grasp what was behind it and what was possible and what was not possible. And so I think for a while, automotive here in the Valley was driven very much by what's technologically possible and what people could start to envision. And then it settled in that, hey, these AI systems, these built models that we don't really know what's in them, they're going to be really hard to validate. And so then came this realization of, maybe we need to revert back to what can we actually test and make sure functions, and where is this machine learning approach maybe not the right way. And so I think what happened out of this right now, there's kind of two driving factors. The first one is there's a bit of a lack of regulatory guidance in many fields. Automated driving, the SAFE Act that is coming is maybe trying to adapt some of that, but then a lot of these regulatory issues haven't been solved. And so there's a lack, and companies are trying to push into that space regardless. And this is where, again, I think technology is still driving it. But the other side that I see very strongly is that companies are more and more realizing that despite this technology enabling new ways of doing it, we have to refocus on what the human does in that context. Because an automated car may be driving itself, but it's still there to drive a human in many cases, unless it's logistics, which is a whole different field. But as long as there's a human in the interaction, we need to focus on that person, because they're ultimately the one making the decision. Will I call this versus an Uber or a Lyft, or drive myself? And so I think a lot of these issues are currently we're seeing are recentering around the human. And then this goes to the extent of having driver monitoring systems to ensure that your ADAS actually works the way you want it to, and that the human is still paying attention, or be that testing, your seating concepts. Maybe, I have the vision that my automated vehicle has seats that face each other, but do people actually like that? Is my car driving smooth enough so that people will accept sitting backwards in the car? All these like human-centered issues, I would call them, I think they're coming back in, and this is kind of where I see there's a lot of focus on. And as FKA, we come in there because that's kind of our bread and butter. We're really strong in orchestrating testing with participants, analyzing it, and also consulting our clients in the way of, this is really what you want to test, even though your research question may sound like this, but you need to go in this direction, and we can help you in testing and finding performance indicators to do so.
Right. So I'm not going to ask you to reveal your clients. I know a lot of the work that you do is actually under non-disclosure. The fact that you have clients, I think, is fairly common knowledge. But maybe you can tell what kind of clients. Automotive manufacturers, suppliers, researchers, who you're working with?
Companies or things we can talk about is our university collaborations. We've had some very successful work with the university in San Jose that we did specifically with Professor Francesca Favaro. She now, I think she isn't super active anymore because she joined Waymo a while back, but we did some work with her around specifically takeover of tests, how they would handle the situation when the car wants to give control back to the human. Besides that, we do work with kind of anyone you would expect, the OEMs, the local new OEMs, you could call them here in the Valley, suppliers, but also technology companies. And in some instances, there's some of our clients you would probably not expect to be in automotive, but we're seeing more and more companies entering this space, also because the increasing levels of automations obviously make more and more applications possible in the car. Yeah, all these new applications, they want to create their business in the vehicle, because there's people who expect that we will spend more and more time in the car, just not driving, but more actually freed up to do other things. And so these companies are really becoming a big part of our customer base as well.
I spent a year working with a fairly well-known architect and commercial interior designer. They designed the Twitter building. They designed places for LinkedIn and Facebook and other big clients. And I got to kind of know their design language and the way they spoke about things. And I was astounded when I heard a, let's say, not to be repeated OEM using exactly the same language about automotive interiors. They were talking about biophilic design. They were talking about the environment that kind of surrounds a user of a vehicle. Are you seeing that same thing, that maybe worlds are starting to merge when it comes to the kind of the interaction between occupants of vehicles and the vehicle environment itself?
I mean, it's always hard to say what each OEM is doing. It's in some ways different. I think we definitely do see a bit of a tendency right now towards more and more touchscreen and more simplistic interiors in vehicles, not even in the automated field, but the actual consumer production vehicles that are human driven. And a lot of what we see is this push to just go completely touchscreen, go as many screens as possible, is a little contrary to what I said earlier, this human-centered approach, because I recently watched a video which I found really interesting by a German journalist who reviewed the ID.3, the brand new Volkswagen. Mm-hmm. And he said something which I found was really interesting. He said, when a car company puts out a new vehicle, the man was in some ways really upset about the interfaces, because the touch changed the volume. And why do I have to go into this menu to adjust something when why don't you just give me that little button, that little knob that I can turn like I always did? And, you can argue maybe he is trying to cling on to something old. Maybe it's like the discussion with the Apple audio jack. But in some ways, I think we're kind of overstepping right now to then step back into what's actually sensible. And I think we're going to see a little bit of a move back from just purely screen interfaces everywhere.
Not to mention that person is also in a projectile traveling at 70 miles an hour at the time.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So this kind of does matter. So I think just coming back to simulation a little bit, maybe, over your left shoulder, I'm seeing a big old screen with 1, 2, 3, 4 projectors there. Why don't you tell people what that's about and how your kind of simulator provides the kind of environment that you've been speaking of?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mean right here? I don't know if you can see as you can tell, I'm not really here, it's virtual. But no, what you see behind me is our full vehicle simulator. So the screen in the front is where we project a virtual environment on, and that entire vehicle that stands here is completely stationary. We just use the image to kind of create the illusion of motion. So as the car is driving through this virtual environment, the image changes according to the movement of the vehicle, 100% exact to whatever controls you give onto the steering wheel and the pedals. And by doing so in this darkened out room, you actually really get that feeling of driving. And like I said, we use that mostly for testing human-centered innovations. So anything where the human interacts. And why do we do that? It's a completely safe environment to test. So what that allows us to do with our clients is go really early on when the products are still in, just past design phase. They're a concept. They haven't been tested at all. And you don't want to put this out on the road because, you might have an accident, or it might fail, or it might cause interferences. You can come in our simulator and you can test it in a safe condition. It's repetitive, so you can test the same thing over and over again with different people. And that's where we use the simulator for. It's some of us like to say it's a time machine, right? So you can travel in the future and test those systems that nobody has in their car yet. Also because they don't have to function. So if I want to have a system that would take me 2 years to build in an actual car to work, in the simulator, I can just pretend like it works and test how much you like it and test how much you actually want to interact with it.
It occurs to me you can also kind of, to that question about, the kind of, theoretical he with the knob, you can see whether that really is an artifact of drivers that have been doing this for a long time, or if it translates to people that are new to driving or are quite younger. Is that correct?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We've actually found some really interesting things. I mentioned the research with the University of San Jose, and I like to mention that because we can talk about it. But one of the aspects we found is that the hypothesis was that older drivers will take longer to regain control of their vehicle when it's been driving automatically for a while. Now, what we found in the research studies we did with them is that the older the drivers were, the quicker they actually took over control. And that sounds counterintuitive at first, but it makes sense when you look at it from that standpoint, that these older drivers, they weren't willing to cede control. All the drivers were told to pay attention to the road continuously, and they were told this system drives the vehicle, but you are controlling it. But the younger people will completely trust the system, took their eyes and their mind off the road, and were completely disengaged from it. They weren't supervised, so they could do that on their own. Whereas the older drivers were still focusing on the road. And as soon as the system said, please take over control, they were right there. I think it's these really interesting aspects that are somewhat counterintuitive that you can find with this kind of research that otherwise would be overlooked. And then you might design your system in a way that isn't, ideal or isn't safe necessarily.
So, okay, you're obviously super passionate about this. So I'm going to take you back. You talked about Time Machine.
Yep.
Young Christian Roth, 10, 11 years old. What made you get interested in this? Did you always want to do this?
I actually think it's funny. I would say it even goes further back than 10 years old. And it kind of relates to this guy as well, because it was my godfather who had this dark blue BMW convertible. I think it was a 3 Series E36 probably at the time. And it was just this, I can't even say what it was about it, but it fascinated me in such a way. You could drop the roof down and you could go and zip about. It was manual, gearboxed. It was great. It was just a fun car, and we would drive through this place in Germany called the Eifel, a national park, windy road. That kind of got me hooked on, wow, these big machines, with roaring engines. They kind of, they have something that I was passionate about. And then I started taking them apart. So my dad would get new company cars every now and then, and I would spend the first weekend he had it pulling every plastic piece off that I could. And he probably hated it, but it was the most interesting aspect to me, because I found that they, on the inside, kind of were pretty raw, but then also really high tech. So, all these plastic rivets. And then on the other side, you find, little ECUs for everything, displays. And so there's that complexity of it. And this working together of so many components in one big piece that made me really interested in automotive and in cars in general. And that's never really stopped for me ever since.
So most people have a kid that terrorizes the cat, right? You're tearing apart your parents' car. Okay, so maybe this was a good choice for you. But that's really, I think that's really interesting. So you went into engineering in college, right?
Right. Yeah, I became a mechanical engineer. But I already, so when I decided on what to study, I knew I wanted to do engineering, and I knew I wanted to be mechanical, because I always liked the mechanical aspect of how things, work together and intertwine. But I did a combined degree with business as well, because I was also very interested in innovation and how companies reach innovation, how all these aspects of a business have to work together to create new innovative ways of doing things. And so I did a combined degree, and then specialized specifically into automotive technology again. And through that, I actually got into contact with the Institute for Automotive Engineering, which fka spun out of. And through that, you could say through my studies, I was directly evolved into becoming part of fka.
Now, you started fka as an engineer, but pretty quickly, you became the leader of fka Silicon Valley. Maybe tell us a little bit about how that went for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was obviously a quick transition. I agree. But if I reflect back on it, I joined fka very, very much with the goal in mind to come here to Silicon Valley and develop business out here. I knew Silicon Valley was becoming more and more a hotspot of innovation for automotive as well, right? Everyone knows Silicon Valley as the center of innovation anyway. But I wanted to come here, and I think I was in the right time, and I had the right skill set because, like I mentioned, I had this combined degree of technical background, but also business savvy, and having seen different countries and being sort of well equipped to work with different people and integrate people. And it came really naturally. I started taking on more and more leadership roles in the company anyway. I would frequently talk with the previous CEO of FK Silicon Valley, sort of every other week. And at some point he basically said, you're doing basically my job at this point. And why don't you want to actually go ahead and do it? I think it would take some load off me, and I think it would help you in the sense that you can actually take responsibility and take full charge. And so, yeah, it's a transition. It's definitely different. I think any young engineer that steps into a leadership role will understand that it's hard to let go sometimes of wanting to do the actual work on the bottom level. Like I said, I love pulling apart cars, but it doesn't make sense for me to be the one fixing our simulator car up. So I need to let these things go. But it feels great at the end of the day too, when you can build a team and orchestrate bigger things that one person can't do it. I think it's been an interesting learning curve, and a friend of mine said this recently to me. He said, you go it alone, you go quick, but you go it together and you go further. I think that sums it up really well, and that's where understanding this made it a really great progression for me.
The last year has not been easy for anyone, but especially an organization and a team that kind of relies on interacting with people and having folks actually take part in your kind of experimentation and the development work. How did you respond? And what are you most excited about now that things are starting to, dare I say, clear up a bit?
Oh, I mean, I fully agree. Last year was rough. Mid last year, we had a study in our simulator plan set up. Everything was, well on track with the customer. We had a big safety protocol for COVID in place. I think it was a Monday afternoon when Gavin Newsom announced new restrictions, and the whole project just came crashing down on us. And luckily, we were pretty agile with our customer, and Germany at the time was much better. And so we said, look, we can't test here in California. It's just not safe. And they fully agreed. But we were able to shift it, and we said, let's just test in Germany. We have the same simulator in Germany. There's very few cases. It's pretty safe. Let's just replicate it in Germany. We were able to do the project. It took a little bit longer, but we got through it. And yeah, for this year, we've already run one study with a client in our simulator. It ran really smoothly. Our protocols were pretty sound. And now that, vaccines are coming out, we're really excited to be able to offer that a lot more. And reduce some of that overhead that came with the whole pandemic and the public health orders. Really excited to keep pushing. We have a couple of interesting developments coming up in our simulator. We're actually moving to a new office, and so we will be rebuilding our simulator in a bit more modern fashion, adding some new features to it. And what I'm really excited for this year is being able to actually host people at some point again. I really hope we can do an in-person meeting again and get some folks into the simulator, have them experience the new things that we've been doing, and really want to get that sort of community spirit back. That's what I'm really looking forward for this year.
Yeah, and FKA was really doing a great job with with your meetups. You were doing meetings with, I think it was the Society for Automotive Engineers, SAE, and you were really bringing a lot of people together. And I'm really hoping you can continue that in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're very much excited for continuing to do that. We've been doing a couple of virtual meetups with SAE this year already, and. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're eyeing end of August. The SAE Formula teams, the student teams are finishing their season off, and we want to give them a chance to present their vehicles. And actually, we're looking to do that one in person end of August if things pan out the way we're looking at it. And that would be a great event for everyone to attend.
Somebody from our audience asked if you have an internship program. Do you wanna share some contact info?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're always looking for interns. We have 1 or 2 students usually at a time who work for us. Not even just on the traditional internship basis, but even throughout their academic year, they can work part-time with us. Coming from a university background, we really enjoy working with young engineers and also psychologists and UX researchers when they're still developing, showing them sort of how we do things and starting to give them more and more responsibilities. So if they want to reach out, head over to our website. There's a contact form. Just shoot us a message. We're always happy to see what's possible.
So 2 things quick as we wrap up. Team Verstappen, Team Hamilton, Team somebody else.
Oof. Well, I was really sad for Bottas. He doesn't get talked about, but come on, he was out because of a wheel nut. Like that guy, give him a break. He's been doing a great job as a teammate of Hamilton, and he doesn't get any credit. So
that's true.
But honestly, I'm not a Verstappen fan, and I also don't want to see Hamilton win another championship. What I want to see is Vettel getting better and better in his green little car. So that would be great for me. But I think it's unlikely. And then maybe, Daniel getting some points. That'd be fantastic. I'd like to see that too.
The stories within the stories of F1 are sometimes more exciting than the race. That's very true.
Exactly.
Well, good. Are there any kind of shout outs or plugs you'd like to give? I know you've been involved with a couple of charities in Ecuador. Maybe there's something you'd like to just kind of mention to folks. We could share it.
Well, not a ton on Ecuador right now, but anyone who's interested in FKA or our simulator, head over to our website, shoot us a message if you're interested in working with us. We're definitely working to making our simulator more and more accessible. Also startups that are interested in demoing with our simulator, head over there, go to our website, or LinkedIn, Twitter. We have a couple of good videos that you could show on YouTube as well. And in terms of projects, like you said, there's not too much we can talk about. We are pretty busy. We're working with a bunch of companies and some public institutions as well. If those things can be talked about, we'll post them on social media. But mostly, unfortunately, we can't talk too much about it.
Well, safe to say, if you like your car, there's a lot of work that went into making it so intuitive, and we really appreciate the work we do. We're really happy to be friends with you, and we're going to wish you all the best of luck in your new location coming up here in the summer. With that, we're really happy that everybody could join us. This has been People of Prospect with Christian Roth of fka Silicon Valley, and we wish you all a great day.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Absolutely. You take care.